Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 78. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's trailer week. Apparently everyone decided, hey, let's release our trailers. And by everyone, I just mean a Marvel TV show. But of course, the DC project that we all want to talk about in just a bit. And we will. Of course, we absolutely will. So guys, thank you so much for joining us again on the Access Blockbusters Pod. And Next week should be a very exciting episode coming up because there are a couple really interesting movies that I am going to go check out. One of them being Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I already have my tickets, and then I'm going to try to see Lilo and Stitch as well in time for next week's episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. So I am very, very excited. But before we get into any of that, that's next week's episode. Let's dive into this episode. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, make sure to do so. Give this video a like. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, it means a ton to me, guys. It's been an amazing year. Let's try to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think we can totally do it. And so make sure to subscribe if you want to see the audio only platforms. We are on Spotify, Overcast, and Apple Podcast. I always say Anchor. We used to be on Anchor. Anchor, I think, changed to Spotify. It's a whole thing. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Overcast, so make sure to check us out there if you want to listen to the audio only. Give us a rating. And that's about it, guys. Let's get into the topics for today. Alrighty, everyone. We have a new trailer for a movie I'm actually quite excited about. Surprisingly so. I am pretty excited about this. F1, the movie starring Brad Pitt. For some context here, I am not somebody who watches Formula One, so I have no stake in this. As you know, for example, I'm a big baseball fan. Ironically, another Brad Pitt movie. I really was excited for Moneyball when it came out, and I love that movie. But I love that movie also, as a movie, but also as a baseball fan. But for this movie, for Formula One, for F1, I have no stake in it in terms of being somebody who's interested in F1 as a sport. Not to say that I haven't, I dislike it or anything, just haven't really seen my fair share of it. But, I think one of the big selling points, and they know this, right? They know this from the trailer because they're putting in every single piece of marketing from Joseph Kosinski, the director of Top Gun Maverick. And look, Top Gun Maverick, I never saw the first Top Gun. I went to go see Top Gun Maverick because everyone was saying you have to watch this movie in theaters. I did, and it was one of the best theater experiences I have ever had. It's amazing. And so, that alone as a selling point for another kind of vehicle-driven movie is, I'm on board. And from the first trailer, I believe the first trailer we talked about after the Super Bowl, I was excited. I was on board because the way that the action maybe is the wrong word, but the way that the races are shot, for example, it felt very reminiscent to Top Gun Maverick. The way that everything's in person, everything is so sharp and in focus and tense. And you feel like you're in the car with the driver, like in Top Gun Maverick. You felt like you were in the cockpit with the pilots. It's amazing. And so I've grown more and more excited for this film, for F1. And now we have a new trailer to talk about. And I'm not going to pretend I know everything about car racing. To be honest with you, when they were talking about in the trailer the fact that, F1 is not an individual sport, it's a team sport, and they were doing all the pit stop stuff, that's a tongue twister, I was really thinking the only point of reference I have for this is the original Cars movie. That movie was fun because, you got to see in animated form, granted, but all the stuff about, when they're getting their tires changed and whatnot. So that's what I was thinking about, honestly, if that tells you anything about how much I know about Formula One and how invested I am in that. But, just again, the action, the way that everything's shot, right? And I love, I love a good, based on a true story kind of movie. But, I'm always worried about them. The other one that I remember was Gran Turismo. I never actually got to seeing that movie because the trailers basically, in my eyes, spoiled the whole movie. And I just kind of hate when those based on a true story kind of movies come out and the trailers are like, oh, well, it's based on a true story, so there's nothing to spoil. I still want to feel for these characters. I still want to know what's going to happen to them and follow along their journeys. And I kind of hate when those trailers spoil the whole movie. So I'm glad that this trailer is just a bunch of quick shots and you get a little bit more of the story. It's the classic, oh, this guy's past his prime. He's a veteran now. Sonny, right? Can he reclaim his glory? And, there's the added stakes of everyone else relying on him, which I like. I like that that's, additional stakes for the character as well, not just, oh, I need to reclaim my glory and whatnot. And Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt. He's great in everything, most, everything that I've seen at least. And I'm excited to see this movie. I think that Joseph Kosinski, if he just makes a career out of, I don't know what he directed before Top Gun Maverick, but if he just makes a career out of directing these high-intensity vehicle racing action movies, I would love if he directed an X-Wing movie. I know Patty Jenkins was going to direct Rogue Squadron, the X-Wing movie, but if Joseph Kosinski comes and takes up that project, I would be so excited for that, because that was what that Rogue Squadron movie was pitched as Top Gun, but in Star Wars. So, if he can carve out a career in that space, then I'd be all down for it. So I watched the trailer for the new F1 movie, and it's been on my radar for, top anticipated movies of 2025, and it's coming out in just a couple months. I am very, very excited about it. Guys, have you seen the new trailer for Brad Pitt's F1? Are you excited about it? Have you been excited about it? Or are you still kind of on the fence? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys. Well, it didn't seem like this was going to be a question that needed answering, but apparently it is. There has been a question swirling around Hollywood and the movie news space for the past, I guess, couple months now. And that question is Matt Reeves actually directing The Batman Part 2? Because there have been a lot of reports, surprisingly, a lot of rumors, a lot of reports about the fact that Matt Reeves is no longer going to be directing The Batman Part 2. Now, there have been other reports saying, and these haven't been debunked necessarily, but the fact that, Matt Reeves had some personal things going on, and that's really the reason for the delays for The Batman Part 2. I don't know. I don't have any insight into that. That, for all we know, is still the case. But the question then becomes, well, okay, so then whatever the case might be, is he directing The Batman Part 2? That's been up in the air because, again, it's been delayed. The film was supposed to come out this year, I think, and at one point, and now it's coming out in 2027, I think, October 2027. So still a long, long ways away. But James Gunn, as he likes to do, has gotten onto social media, and when responding to a fan, basically, in 2 words, says, yes, of course, Matt Reeves is still directing The Batman Part 2. Somebody responded to, I believe he was on Threads, which is, I think, his favorite social media platform, and asked, is Matt Reeves still directing The Batman Part 2? To which he responds with 2 words, yes, huh. Huh being, I guess, that's a silly question. And so we have confirmation from the studio head himself, the co-CEO of DC Studios, that Matt Reeves is still directing The Batman Part 2. Couple ways to look at this, right? Number one, the most obvious one, is yes, of course. If James Gunn says that Matt Reeves is directing The Batman Part 2, then of course he is directing The Batman Part 2. That's all well and good. Other part of this equation is that, well, if he wasn't directing The Batman Part 2, and they weren't ready to announce it yet, would they say anything to the contrary? Would they? Because, not that James Gunn has any incentive to lie. My thought with this, it's very unlikely, to be honest with you. I think the most likely scenario is that Matt Reeves is still directing The Batman Part 2 at this point, and James Gunn is out here just confirming that. Because, again, he doesn't have any incentive to lie. In fact, he didn't have any incentive to respond to this person on social media in the first place. He didn't need to respond to whoever this individual was. He could have just completely ignored this person and moved on. And, the fact that James Gunn, he enjoys responding to people on social media, but he doesn't have to. And so the fact that he did means that, well, it seems more likely than not that Matt Reeves is going to be directing The Batman Part 2. Again, there is a small possibility that this is the company line while they try to figure things out, and there's a mess going on with The Batman Part 2, and they just don't want to talk about it right now. That is possible. But I think that this is more confirmation that we've heard many reports and many rumors in the past few months, and we've talked about this on the Access Blockbusters pod, that Robert Pattinson has been saying, and Matt Reeves has been saying, and James Gunn has been saying, that they are going to be filming The Batman Part 2 later in the year, and they still don't have a finished script, but they're getting there. The story is great. Robert Pattinson said he's seen some things and he's liked them. So it looks like this film is still underway. It's still in production. It's just that we're not getting it as soon as we would have all liked to have seen it. Because, I would have loved to have seen The Batman Part 2 today. I would have loved to have seen it right now. But the fact is, we're not getting it right now. We're going to have to wait a little while longer, and that kind of sucks because we've just been waiting on Matt Reeves for whatever reason. So there is that. Guys, what do you make of this news? So James Gunn is out here confirming that, yes, it's a ridiculous question. Of course, The Batman Part 2 is still on track, and The Batman Part 2 is going to be directed by Matt Reeves. That is not out of the question. Just like how a lot of reports and rumors have been saying that Matt Reeves is no longer on the project, James Gunn is out here saying, nope, that is not true. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, let's talk about episode number 5 of season 2 of The Last of Us. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen the episode, no worries, just make sure to save this segment, save the podcast, and save the whatever platform you're watching it on. Just save it for later, or if you're watching the whole podcast, just make sure to skip around and come back once you have. Again, this is going to be full spoilers, so just so you are warned. Let's dive into The Last of Us, season 2, episode number 5. So, just to reiterate, I've been enjoying the season thus far, and obviously, it's been a roller coaster, right? The first episode was really melancholy, really sad. Joel dealing with the ramifications of what he did at the end of season 1, and there's sort of a falling out with Ellie as well. And then season 2 is the big episode. I mean, it's going to be hard to get over that episode. It was unbelievable. It was crazy, emotional, gut punch. Season 2 where Joel dies. So then we're starting to track, right? Because I think there's only 7 episodes in season 2 of The Last of Us because, and this is going to be relevant to something, or to later discussion points in this spoiler discussion, but, because they've made the decision to split part 2, the game part 2, into 2 different seasons, we only have 7 episodes here, where I think the first season was a little bit longer. So this is only going to be 7 episodes, which means there's only going to be 2 more episodes in this season. And so, just kind of tracking the progression, right? Episode 2 kind of felt like this massive crescendo, which is amazing to have, so early in the season. But then we kind of wonder, or I was kind of wondering, what are the next 2 episodes going to be? And so episode 3, I was pleasantly surprised to find that it was really, I think episode 3 was a transition episode, and I think that they did a really good job of it in the transition episode of, shifting focus away from Ellie, right, or away from Joel and onto Ellie, and saying, okay, so now what happens? And Ellie has this conflict in her, or this resolve to want to get revenge against Abby, right? That's the direction that the show is going. And so I was like, okay, she's heading to Seattle. Let's see what happens there. And then episode 4 happens, and episode 4 felt like it was just going in circles. They end up in Seattle. They try to do a couple things, and they kind of end up where they started. I get it. There's some great character moments in there as well. I think that the stuff with, Dina being pregnant, I've had a week to think about this, and it felt sudden in the moment. I know that there were hints before that I just didn't catch, but it felt sudden in the moment. But I think that it's an interesting character. I don't want to say trait, but part of her character arc to have in this season, where she's also carrying a child with her throughout these horrifying and terrifying adventures that they're going on. And so I think that's something that carries on into this episode as well, when they have that conversation later where Ellie's like, oh my gosh, you gotta back out of this, we gotta go. So I think that's interesting. But again, I just think, sure, the burgeoning romance between Ellie and Dina, that's great and all. But I feel like in terms of forward momentum, it just didn't feel like the episode was going anywhere in particular. And so I was disappointed by that, because I was looking forward to, okay, how are we going to continue to push forward into the Abby Ellie storyline? We push forward a little bit more in this episode. If you watch my immediate reaction, you'll know I enjoyed this episode. I thought this was a solid return to form for The Last of Us. And by return to form, the bar has been set so high for this show. Return to form means it's probably, compared to most other shows, episodes of television for other shows, it's an excellent, tongue twisters, excellent episode of television. It really is. So, just for The Last of Us, though, it felt like, okay, we're kind of back to fundamentals, back to the roots here. And there are some things here and there we'll talk about in my in-depth discussion that I still kind of feel like, are we going in circles? What's going on? We'll get to that momentarily. So let's dive in here and kind of do a mini play-by-play of this episode. So we start out here with this flashback scene in the hospital. It seems like we're in Seattle still, and we get this revelation now that the virus is airborne, or can be airborne. The spores are in the air, which feels like it should have been a plot point that was introduced much earlier, because this feels like a true inciting incident for the show. Like, what would make this season different? Well, obviously it can be, just the revenge quest for Ellie to go after Abby, and that's obviously a big driving point of this season. But on the surface, if it's just Ellie goes after Abby, it's a very singular, linear storyline, and you need subplots, right? And subplots, so far have been WLF and the scars and the war between them. But even that hasn't been super interesting to me as of yet, just because I don't think they've been, they haven't wanted to reveal a lot of those secrets and subplots and things like that as of, just what's going on, the mechanics behind it and all that kind of stuff. I think they started to with Isaac, but they, it really hasn't revealed itself in full force just yet. I think a subplot about the virus suddenly becoming airborne is super interesting and feels like something that they should have introduced much earlier in the season, to be honest. But I still think it's a very interesting concept to introduce in the show. We cut back to present day, and I was, again, a little bit worried that this was going to be another Ellie and Dina kind of meander around for a little bit and nothing really happens. I say that facetiously. I know things happened in episode 4. And I didn't dislike episode 4. I was just a little bit surprised that, okay, we're kind of halfway through this season. where are we going to start to pick up? And that's really where more of my disappointment came from. But, at the beginning of this episode, it kind of felt similar. I mean, there's a lot of Ellie playing the guitar in this season, and I think we're going to see some more flashbacks to that with her and Joel in next episode, which I'm looking forward to. But, she starts to play the guitar again, and I was like, okay, I really liked the scene in last episode, but I just was a little worried. But then they very quickly start to get going and start to move forward. So then they go on here and they start walking throughout Seattle, and they see the dead bodies, and they see this graffiti on the wall of the Prophet. And it's a question, right, of who is the Prophet, because as far as I know, she hasn't been revealed yet, and I'm kind of curious. We haven't seen Abby in quite a while. Wild theory, is it related to Abby? Is she Abby? I doubt it, because it's, they seem in very strict opposition to one another, the WLF and the Scars. So I don't know who this Prophet lady is, but I'm sure that she's going to be a very prominent plot point later on, and I'm very curious to see where that goes. But then, like I said, we have that conversation that I was alluding to earlier between Dina and Ellie, where Dina reveals just a tragic backstory with her, and how her parents died, and about the first time she killed somebody. And it's hard, because what Dina says is horrific, and it's terrifying, and it hurts, but she's also egging Ellie on into this cycle of revenge and this cycle of violence, and you just don't want that, because Dina's like, I would take revenge too. And Dina says, because Dina says this to Ellie, she's like, look, I know if I die, it's on me. And it's one thing to say that, and it's even another thing to believe that. But Ellie, and I mean that from Dina's perspective, it's one thing for Dina to say that. But, from Ellie's perspective, this is another added layer, another added burden on her of now. I mean, Dina can say that her death is on herself, but that's not true, right? Ellie would feel horribly responsible if Dina dies, and unfortunately, I feel like that's coming up in this season just based on how things are going. And not only that, but now that this is where the pregnancy comes in, I think on top of that, the fact that she's carrying a child is another added layer on top of all this. So I'm very scared for them. I think Ellie as a character is too. So they head into Seattle, and they're going through this big building in the middle, and I thought this was going to be the basement level. I thought they were going to find the basement level in that section. It turns out Ellie finds the basement with the spores a little bit later, but it was really tense. I mean, the fact that they're encountering all of these infected, the smarter infected, and the way that they shoot it, the way that the camera work kind of flickers onto them, and you kind of see them in the shadows and then in the flashlights, it's really tense, and I love that. I think this should have been, I had the realization during this moment that I feel like this episode and last episode should have been combined, because I feel like that this episode has the meat and the last episode has the emotional weight that the writers wanted the characters to have. And I feel like if you combine the two episodes, it would have been a really solid hour and a half long episode of television. I digress. This is the episode we got, but it's really great. And it's really tense, right? The way that they're going through the building and whatnot. Also a quick profession of love from Dina to Ellie and vice versa, right before they go into a death trap, which is always fun. And yeah, I mean, out of all the episodes, by the way, this one feels the most like a video game. At least this sequence does. You can let me know in the comments down below if you've played the games, if this going through this building was part of a sequence in the video game, because it feels very much like, okay, gotta conquer this level before we move on here. And then they get saved, and I was thinking, oh, who is this person? Is this going to be WLF? Is this going to be a Scar? It's Jesse. Jesse comes out of nowhere, and it turns out that Jesse and Tommy were tracking them here. I suppose that makes sense. It just wasn't even crossing my mind at all that we'd see Jesse and Tommy in this setting and just at any point. So it was a big surprise to me. I suppose, again, it makes sense that they were going to go after them. And Ellie was like, how'd you find us? And Jesse's like, oh, the map you left. There's some questions that I have about how precisely Jesse knew exactly where they were going to go and how he himself didn't get caught either. But again, I mean, I think that those things will either get explained or it's just not that important to the story. They go into the forest, though, and then the Scars are sacrificing a WLF member, which is horrific. It's terrifying. And then they go and start chasing after Ellie and the crew. Dina gets shot, and so Ellie has to split off from them. And Ellie goes to the hospital, and she finds Nora, who is one of the people who were part of the crew that killed Joel. And man, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to watch because you know how much Ellie wants her revenge. So much so that Nora is able to bait her and distract her, and there's this chase throughout the hospital. And as you realize that she's about to drop into that what do you call it, the basement level, right? As she's about to drop into the basement level, you kind of realize what's going on here, and all those threads start to connect together. Because obviously Ellie, I wondered if Ellie, there was going to be the subplot of maybe Ellie's not immune to the spores themselves, but she's immune to the bites. But it looks like she's immune to the spores as well. The set design is incredible. Just seeing the cordyceps and the fungus all around the basement, it gave me literal body chills seeing that. It was really really big kudos to the set designers here. But Nora's confronting Ellie, or Ellie's confronting Nora, and Nora's telling Ellie, all these things about it. Like, she's revealing. It's supposed to be a big moment, right? A big moment about how Ellie is, didn't know that Joel was the one who killed everyone in the hospital, including Abby's dad. But Ellie says, I know. And so then, jumping ahead a couple minutes, right? We have the flashback at the very end of the episode of Joel coming back. And I wonder if, I'm sure we'll find out this must be where the rift started, where Joel must have told Ellie what was going on. And that's where the rifts began between the two of them. Maybe. I'm sure that will make some more sense in the next episode. If she knew. Maybe she was bluffing in this scene. I don't know. So that's one thing that will have to get resolved in the next episode. But the way that she was beating Nora, it's the idea of the cycle of violence, right? It's you think that revenge is going to right the wrong, and in reality, it just continues to perpetuate itself, continues to perpetuate the violence, and it just never stops. And we end on that little flashback of Joel, or whether or not she's waking up from a dream, or I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. By waking up from a dream, I mean, she gets out of there and then she's sleeping or whatever. I don't know what this is. If it's a flashback or something she's thinking about in that moment, I don't know. And we'll have to find out, because that means Pedro Pascal is coming back, probably for the majority of episode 6, and then we'll head into episode 7. So I would imagine episode 6 is going to be a big flashback episode, and then episode 7 is going to be a confrontation between Ellie and Abby. Again, I mean, if that's the way that they're planning it, and I don't know if that's the way that they're planning it here, I really do feel like, you do see the points in which this first half of the game was stretched out to fit a full season. And honestly, I mean, again, pending how season 2 goes, and pending how season 3 goes, so we're not even going to know about this until season 3 comes out. I feel like stretching it out into 2 seasons was maybe not the best decision. Again, I don't. It's not that I dislike any episode in particular. Episode 4 again was disappointing, but you just kind of feel like it's too stretched out and too shortened all at the same time, and it's kind of hard to decipher that. So we'll see where we go from here. But again, I thought this episode 5 was a really solid return to form for the show. So guys, what did you think of season 2, episode 5 of The Last of Us? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Is this a good episode in your eyes, or perhaps this is still going in the wrong direction? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we've gotten our first trailer for Spider-Man. And no, it's not our first trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day, because that film hasn't even started filming yet. So no, it's not anything Spider-Man Brand New Day. Actually, there was another Spider-Man related project that has been filming for, I think it actually wrapped filming a little while ago, very secretly, not secretly, but just kind of under the radar, and it's been filming, and it wrapped recently, and now we have our first tiny teaser trailer. As of the recording of this segment, and I don't know, maybe if the full trailer comes out, you'll never hear this, because I'll re-record and do a reaction for the full trailer that comes out. But as of right now, we have a tiny little teaser trailer that has surfaced online for Spider-Noir. Now, Spider-Noir, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a live-action, I don't want to say adaptation, but live-action series based on the character originally from the comic book, Spider-Man Noir, who made his appearance in the movies in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And he was part of the group with Penny Parker and Spider-Ham and all of those fun side characters in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And he was voiced, of course, iconically by Nicolas Cage. And he is also going to return, I believe, in Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, as evidenced by the end of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But interestingly enough, right, because Sony, who owns these Spider-Man characters, Sony does not have a streaming service of their own. And so they're not developing these movies and TV shows for their own particular streaming service, much like how Disney Plus would make a Wonder Man series or a Vision Quest series, for example. What they are doing instead is offering to produce these series and sell them to other studios. And in this case, they have decided to sell the Spider-Man Noir distribution rights to Amazon Prime Video. So they're making a live action series, not an animated series, a live action series based on Spider-Man Noir. To be determined, I'm not entirely clear if this is the exact same multiversal Spider-Man Noir that appeared in Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse. We'll see. But this is going to be some kind of adaptation of that. And we got our very first look at it. And look, I mean, this is a show that I wasn't necessarily over the moon excited about. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best TV show ever made. Nothing like that. I will say, though, I was intrigued because one of the best things about Spider-Man, those animated Spider-Man films, is that the supporting cast, right? Especially the way that they were written and how different they all were from one another. You know, Penny Parker and Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir were so different from one another. And I loved Nicolas Cage as the voice for Spider-Man Noir. I thought he brought such a funny faux edginess to him that I thought was just incredible. And now he's returning to voice him and play him in live action. And I just, from the beginning of this little teaser, I love the atmosphere. That's the whole point, right? That Spider-Man in a very noir kind of 1900s, a detective thriller sort of vibe. And I love that. I think that's awesome. And then, on top of that, right, we have some shots here of action that looks really great. And I just think it's shot so well. I love when done right, when these movies and shows kind of go for those old, I hesitate to use the word old, but different kind of genres or eras of filmmaking, right? Like how WandaVision was going for that, all the eras of the sitcoms, and how Fantastic Four First Steps is going for a 1960s retro vibe, which I think is awesome, kind of like a Tomorrowland sort of vibe here. And I love how Spider-Man Noir is digging straight into the noir aesthetic, and I think that it's awesome. The dark colors and the shadows and whatnot. And then, of course, at the end of the trailer, we get to hear Nicolas Cage's voice as Spider-Man Noir. He sounds great. Sounds like the character from the animated movies. And we get to see him. And it's just, I don't know, it's different, right? It's different because obviously you're so used to the red and blue and black. And this is just a completely dark with the eyes illuminated in the shadow. I like it. Honestly, I again, this is not a project where I'm over the moon excited about it and whatnot. I'm just, I'm excited. But I'm not... again, I wasn't one of the people who was like, oh, this is made for me and whatnot. But I think watching this little teaser trailer has gotten my excitement up, and I can't wait to see it. I think that it's going to be a really fun series, and I think that it, we'll see the kinds of things that they're able to pull off here. I'm very excited that they're making a series off a character like this. That's just going to be a one-off. I think, right? I don't think we're going to get live action versions of Spider-Gwen and whatnot in this show, but we'll see. I'm very excited about that, guys. What do you think about the first tiny little teaser for Spider-Noir, as the series is called? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, we have an absolutely massive trailer to talk about today. Let's talk about the trailer for the new superhero television show Ironheart. We're going to get to Superman. Don't worry, we're going to get to Superman later on in the podcast episode. Let's talk about, though, the trailer for the next MCU show. And as the MCU begins to slow its cadence in terms of shows, this is going to be one of the last ones, if not the last one, from the, I'm going to say, quote-unquote, old regime of the Bob Chapek era, where Marvel was mandated to put out as much content as it possibly could. If you want a more in-depth discussion about that, last week, we broke down an article from the Wall Street Journal where they talked about everything going on at Marvel and how Kevin Feige was pressured into putting out as much quantity as he possibly could, and now they're scaling back those television shows. And not only that, the television shows are going to be a lot more divorced from the movies. But for now, we have one more left, and that is Ironheart. Ironheart, to me, is still symptomatic of the original regime where television characters were crossing over with movies, because Ironheart came directly from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and every single character was getting their own show, every single character was getting a spin-off, and new characters are being introduced left and right, and faster than we could even keep up with. So that was the time when it was announced, Agatha all along, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Ironheart, and Moon Knight, and all these other shows that were being announced. That, again, it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. Now, the original wave had passed, right? Because the original wave of TV shows was the WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldiers of the world, which I think, generally speaking, I look back on those much more favorably, especially WandaVision, of course, these days, because I think they were generally pretty good. I think WandaVision and Hawkeye were pretty good, and Loki and Falcon and Winter Soldier had their moments, for sure. And then you had Wave 2, which was your She-Hulks, your Moon Knights, Miss Marvels, which hit or miss. And then Wave 3 really with your Secret Invasions, your Agatha All Alongs, and Echoes was sort of the low point, I think. Not because I hated all those shows, but just because you were watching those shows and going, what is the point of this? And again, I don't hate those shows. I think Agatha All Along was surprisingly pretty decent, in my opinion. But it still doesn't change the fact that I think that these shows were a symptom of the previous regime. And I think Ironheart fit into that. Now, Ironheart was supposed to come out 2 years ago, I think, at this point. And for whatever reason, Ironheart had been delayed and delayed and delayed. And it's not even to the point of, because of the strikes. Other shows had been delayed, like Daredevil Born Again was delayed, and Agatha All Along was delayed because of this reshoots and whatnot. And that's all well and good. And we got those shows eventually. Ironheart, for some reason, though, was stuck in this development hell. No pun intended, Mephisto puns. No pun intended, but, it was just stuck. And it could not get unstuck for the longest time. It was so bizarre because all these other shows eventually did come out. Agatha All Along, Secret Invasion, Echo eventually did come out. Daredevil Born Again. Except for Ironheart. Ironheart was just left to dry. And it was, a lot of people were left to wonder why. What was so either wrong or broken with the show that it had to be either buried or reshot or fixed. But eventually, Marvel said we're gonna release the show. Earlier this year and late last year, they confirmed that Ironheart was going to be coming out in 2025. It got a June 24th, 2025 release date. Lo and behold, months go by, and we are now just over a month away from the release of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart, which is what I hear they're going to do, the first 3 episodes. And we get our trailer. And so that's what we're here to talk about. That was a lot of backstory just to talk about the trailer. I think the trailer is pretty okay. And I say that because, I don't know if there's a whole lot to talk about in this segment about the trailer itself. I will say this. I think what sets this apart to me from a trailer like Agatha All Along, for example, where I just kind of went, not a big fan of those trailers, even though I ended up thinking the show was okay, is the main cast. I think Anthony Ramos and Dominique Thorne immediately show themselves to be super charismatic. And I think that if anything, right, this show, because not that I don't like Catherine Hahn, I just didn't love the concept of the Coven of Witches, that whole thing in Agatha All Along. That's fine and all. But I think that Dominique Thorne and Anthony Ramos, to me, exemplify the potential of the show. Because if they're the 2 main leads, I think that this show it definitely has a higher ceiling than most other MCU projects. On top of that, I actually think some of the action looks pretty good. And I'm ambivalent. I'm indifferent on the whole getting someone else an Iron Man suit. And they talk about the fact in the behind the scenes featurette that they released the day before, how this is not a passing of the mantle from Iron Man to Ironheart, but more just her making her own thing. I get that. The suit looks, like Iron Man. The suit looks cool though, in my opinion. And I think at this point that's all you could ask for. It looks cool. And I think that, I think she's from she's working her way to after Wakanda to try to find where she fits into the world. And, you get some shots of MIT, you get the guy from Community, Jim Rash, the dean from MIT, he makes another appearance, and then you see her building her suits, and you kind of see some of her friends as well. I'm hoping that this show is able to skew more towards Miss Marvel, which I still don't think is a perfect show, but I really liked it, and I really liked it because of Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan, and the supporting cast, right? Nakia and Bruno, I loved those 2 characters. And I think that, it helped to flesh out the world of her family as well. So I'm hoping that this show is able to take advantage of those kinds of things, the supporting cast, and make just a fun adventure. Because if we never see Ironheart again in the movies, and that's not to say anything about Ironheart, it just from what I'm hearing, based on the fact that Kevin Feige doesn't want to have the TV shows show up in the movies that much anymore. I don't think Daredevil is going to show up in the movies that much, if at all, anymore. He made his appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home, and I think that might be it for a while. Then, I just hope that this is going to be a fun little adventure that we can go on with Ironheart, and we don't have to worry about the future of the MCU or the future of the Young Avengers, even though I'm sure she'll have some future with all of that. And so we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Guys, what do you think of the first trailer for Ironheart? Are you excited for the series, or are you a little bit iffy or on the fence? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we have some very, very exciting news in terms of the Defenders saga, or should I say the MCU's Defenders saga, which is really now just Daredevil Born Again, because it has now been officially confirmed. Officially. So this is not coming from any trades or any news articles, and even the reliable ones. This is official news. Jessica Jones is coming back. Not even coming back. making her first appearance in the MCU as Jessica Jones. Krysten Riter is coming back as Jessica Jones in the MCU, and she is going to be playing Jessica Jones in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. This is official, guys, because Krysten Riter was at some kind of convention, I think, and she basically came out on stage and she was like, hey, this is it. I'm coming back. So this is the quote that she gave. And it sounds like Jessica Jones will have a pretty significant role. Now, if you haven't seen the end of Daredevil Born Again, I'm going to spoil what happens at the very end because it has major implications for what goes on in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, and it makes sense of why she says what she says. So if you haven't seen it, then this is going to be a spoiler warning for that, but it's been out for a couple months now. So this is what Krysten Riter had to say when making the announcement. She says, quote, "It's so great to be back, returning to Jessica after 3 seasons and the Defenders, and now joining the MCU. I'm so excited to bring back this iconic character, and without giving too much away, there is much more in store for Jessica Jones. This is going to be an incredible season." So, you heard that right. Jessica Jones, actress herself, Krysten Riter, says there is so much more in store for this character in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Ironically enough, I actually started, and for those of you who don't know, I basically, when these shows were initially coming out, I watched only Daredevil Season 1, Daredevil Season 2, then went to Defenders, then went to Daredevil Season 3. I actually didn't watch any of the other Defenders shows. I tried the first episode of Jessica Jones when it first came out, and I didn't really like it for some reason. And so I never really watched the other shows because I loved Daredevil. I loved Daredevil. It was so great. So there was that. But recently, right, I just did a rewatch of Daredevil Season 1, and as I was jumping into Daredevil Season 2, I kind of paused and I went, and again, this is all before the end of Daredevil Born Again. So I didn't even know what happened at the end of Daredevil Born Again, which we'll talk about in just a second. And I kind of went, maybe we should try again. Try rewatching the Defender saga again. If you have been following the channel, if you followed my community tab, you know that I had posed this question of should I just go straight into Daredevil Season 2, and I'll definitely post a rewatch segment of that in a couple weeks in a few weeks when I finish that. But I also said, should I do that, or should I pause that because I had just finished watching maybe 3 or 4 episodes of Daredevil Season 2, and should I go and try Jessica Jones and just do the Defender saga? And the majority of you guys said do the Defender saga. So I did, and I'm almost done with Jessica Jones Season 1. And so that's, it's really great timing, I think. And I think it's a great idea because I wouldn't be surprised if in a few weeks we don't hear about Mike Coulter. And, Finn Jones as Danny Rand, I don't know, maybe because Iron Fist was really not received well amongst the 4 shows. But that being said, I'm assuming that, a lot more Defenders characters are going to show up because at the end of Daredevil Born Again Season 1, Daredevil's like, we need an army. Now, in the bar, in Josie's, when he says that, there aren't that many people around. There's Cherry, and there's the detective who is in episode 5 of Daredevil Born Again, and a couple other people, and obviously Karen is there as well. But, when he says you need an army, I mean, Spider-Man's not showing up. I would just guarantee that because of the rights issues that are going on right now with Sony and not having Spider-Man allowed to be in movies or in TV shows for the MCU, which sucks. I would love to have Spider-Man in there. It would be great, but I digress. If you need an army and you need characters that fit in, and it's Daredevil Born Again, and you have Frank Castle, and Daredevil Born Again is the first 3 seasons of Daredevil are now canon to the MCU, bring on the Defenders. And I think it's great. It's good timing now because now that I've almost finished the first season of Jessica Jones, I have, and we'll talk more fully about my thoughts on the first season as I finish it in the next couple of weeks, I think, and we'll definitely do a segment about that. I will say, without getting into my own just subjective thoughts, it's given me a very rich understanding of the character, much more than I had understood just having seen her in the Defenders, and now I'm very excited to see her and Matt Murdock again together on screen. And again, I think that it's really going to be. I think it's really going to be a matter of, we're going to see the rest of the Defenders show up probably, and I think it's just going to be about a matter of time before we hear those announcements. So I'm very excited about this, about Krysten Riter showing up as Jessica Jones in the MCU. I don't know if this means we're going to get her, individual Jessica Jones shows, and all those shows are going to be revived. I don't know. We'll see how that works out, guys. What do you think of the news? It's official. Jessica Jones is going to be in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Krysten Riter is returning. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, for the final time, let's talk about Andor, the show Andor, and specifically Andor Season 2. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion for episodes 10 through 12 of Andor Season 2, but also we'll sprinkle in, especially towards the end, my thoughts on the season as a whole and the series as a whole, really, because this is it. This is Andor, and I've been thinking about it for a while, and after seeing these final 3 episodes, I think I definitely will, over the next few weeks, do a rewatch of Rogue One as well. And I know I've done a rewatch of Rogue One somewhat recently, but now I think after having seen Andor, both recently having rewatched season 1 a few weeks ago, and then also now just finishing season 2, I think it's appropriate, right? There's a lot to digest now that we know where things stand and where things were going, heading into Rogue One and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to do that, and we'll see where we go from here. But anyways, this is going to be about Andor season 2. If you guys haven't seen the episodes, no worries. Just make sure to save the segment, save the pod, save all of it for later, or skip around on the podcast if that's where you're listening, and then make sure to come back once you have. And let's dive into it, guys. Andor season 2, and Andor season 1 in general. When I did my rewatch of Andor season 1, I liked it a whole lot more than I did the first time. And I really think that binging it had a lot to do with it. Because I think that the week-by-week model was it somehow broke up the momentum of the episodes or something. I don't know. And if you remember from season 1, they weren't releasing all the mini arcs at once. They weren't releasing every 3 episodes at once. They were releasing it a couple episodes at a time or 1 episode at a time. And it just wasn't working that well, in my opinion. And so season 2 has been a little better because every week is 3 episodes, and that's been better because each week is a little mini arc. But I still can't shake the feeling, and I don't want to rewatch it immediately. I still can't shake the feeling that I think binging this season as well is going to be more beneficial, just to see how everything connects in the Gorman arc and everything about the Empire and what's going on there. I just think it would help, because I think that there are parts of this show, this season so far, that I've been, I kind of iffy on, especially towards the beginning more so. Towards the end, it really started to kick into gear with the Gorman arc and now with these final 3 episodes. But towards the beginning, it was a little bit like, there were some things in there that I was a little iffy on, and then as we go along here, you really start to see where this is going. But overall, I love the show. I love how political it is. I love how you get to see the rebellion building and all that, and I think that it's so intricate and it's so well thought out and so well written, and it really makes you see it allows you to see where things are coming from, how the rebellion started from the ground up, from a guy named Luthen. And I know it's not just Luthen, right, who started the rebellion, but really, and that was the big debate towards the end of the series, not to get too ahead of myself, but is really this rebellion that you see on Yavin is not there without Luthen, and that was again a topic of conversation that was going on between Mon Mothma and Bail and all these other characters. So we'll get there. But let's start out here as we usually do and just go through some of my thoughts per each episode, and then we'll talk about the series as a whole at the very end. So let's dive into episode 10, and we start out here with Luthen. And Luthen, it's not looking good because the ISB is onto him, and they've been hunting for Axis. Daedra has been hunting for Axis for the entire show basically, and now she's finally onto him. And also Lonnie comes back, and he's found out about the Death Star, and Luthen he's like, tell me about this weapon. And then looks like Luthen, in his classic Luthen style of do whatever it takes for the rebellion, or do whatever it takes to keep the line moving. He kills Lonnie, it looks like, and just cold-blooded, but no loose ends, right? Luthen was about to kill himself, and for the sake of the rebellion, and that's what Clea makes that sacrifice later on for Luthen, and it's heartbreaking, but that's they believe so much in this cause, and it's brutal the way that they go about it, and we'll see that in some of the flashbacks later on as well. And so then Luthen heads back to the shop, and he starts to to destroy all the evidence. But Dedra Meero, she meets him there, and it's tense, that the confrontation between the two of them, where she's like, I've been waiting for this, and I've dreamt about this, and it's scary. It's really scary. And she brings out that Imperial Starpath unit, and for those of you who remember, that's from Andor, the first 3 episodes, right, where that was what Andor was going to steal. And that's when Luthen recruited him to the rebellion for the first part. I love this line that Luthen says here, where Daedra says, "You disgust me," and Luthen says, "There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you." And I love that, because it's true. Obviously he's Axis, and he's sort of the person who knows everything, but really what he says here is true, that the rebellion has flown. And the rebellion is so far from just being one person anymore. And obviously Luthen and Clea were very, if they had gotten caught and they had revealed information, they would have known a lot. But Luthen knows. Luthen knows the rebellion is its own beast at this point. And so you kind of figured, right? Because he has that information, and you kind of figured he was going to go out on his own terms. I thought he actually died in this scene, but it turns out he just barely survives. And I was kind of thinking, that would have been like it's an understandable. You kind of figure that's how he's gonna go out in this series, but it felt a little bit abrupt, especially just given the fact that this is so early on in the first episode of this arc. And so then we start getting flashbacks between Luthen and Clea and how Luthen rescued her. And I was like, okay, I'm interested in this, but I'm not sure how this connects. But slowly you start to realize what's going on here as Clea begins to infiltrate the hospital, and she's going to try to get to Luthen. Now, the entire episode, and again, I might just be slow. It might just be because I watched the episodes right as they came out, and it was a little late for me. And I was like, oh, okay, she's going to go try and save Luthen, and that's a very heroic thing for her to do. I didn't know until the very end when she unplugs the device that no, what she was going to do was make the sacrifice and kill him, because she knows that the information it can't get out. It just can't. And so she makes that sacrifice, even though the entire episode, I love actually that the entire episode was really dedicated to Luthen. I think that's awesome. And giving him really a proper send off. The full episode, there's no Andor in this episode. It's just Clea and Luthen. And I love it. And honestly, to me, episode 10 is probably the best episode of the entire season for me, because I don't know. It just shows you the kinds of decisions and choices that these characters have had to make to get to where they are at this point. And Luthen and Clea are such complex characters that you feel for them, but you also you're nervous and tense and it's crazy, it's scary. So anyways, also Daedra is under arrest at this point as well, which is an interesting turn for that character. She doesn't die at the end of the series. She's just kind of under arrest. But yeah, Clea and Luthen, we get back to them, their flashbacks, and the young girl has to witness a firing squad. She has to witness, Luthen setting off a bomb, and she was going to set off the bomb herself, but, it shows you the kinds of characters that they're becoming and that they will become. And, Luthen is like, anything. I'll do anything for this empire, or for this rebellion. And it just shows you who they are. The episode is just incredible to me. I love the dynamic between the two, where you can tell that Luthen genuinely cares about her. Like, he cares about her more than he cares about anyone else in this entire series. And you can tell. You can tell that even then, he's trying to be a little callous to her as a little girl, but even still, you can tell that he really cares about it. And then Clea, there's a great sort of infiltration sequence where she goes to the hospital and she has to unplug that device, and it's horrific and it's beautiful all at once. I think this episode might even be the best of the series for me. It's awesome, and in a really weird way, it's crazy how they were able to pull that off. So that was episode 10. Episode 11, as we head into the final two episodes. So Daedra, she's in a cell, the same kind of cell that Cyril was in very early on when he was first being interrogated by Daedra. Kind of a reversal of roles here. Krennic is back because Krennic is trying to plug up all the loose ends about the Death Star. He's like, listen, we can't have any of those leaks going on, not until Rogue One, right? And Daedra, she was so hyper fixated on finding access that she dug into places that she really shouldn't have. She was digging into files that she really should not have been doing. And that's, it shows you that she's an Imperial loyalist, and she is cutthroat as any of the Imperials, but she did not make all the right decisions either. And I think that is a super interesting, again, just making these characters more and more complex as well. But, they put her in prison, and she's trying to tell them, look, you need to go after Clea, and they kind of ignore her until later on in the episode, but she's right. She's right. So then we finally cut to Andor, and, I was wondering, when are we going to get to Andor? And K2SO is there. They're just hanging out, playing some kind of poker or gambling game or whatever. I love K2SO. Like, watching K2SO for these final two episodes, 1.5 episodes, I was really sad that he was only in 1.5 episodes, because I really miss that character. He's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. And I mean everything in Star Wars. He's one of my favorites. I really, really miss him. And it's, they get the transmission from Clea. It's so good to see Andor and K2 just flying a ship again. It's amazing. They've only been in one movie together, and they made such a big impression on me. And now we get to see them together for a final couple of episodes. And yeah, Will and Cassian, Melshi, they risk it all, because look, Luthen is not seen in a good light in the rebellion and on Yavin, but they know they gotta go save him. And so they go out there, they go back to the old safe house, the old apartment, right? Things are coming together from the entire season. That's where Bix and Cassian were staying for some of the series. And then it's not going to end well, right? But Clea, she's talking about the fact that there's this giant weapon going on here, and Galen Erso, and this is where you start to see the seeds being planted, right, for what happens in Rogue One. Again, I have to watch Rogue One again to figure out how you get from here to when you first meet Cassian, who kills, I'm assuming, the guy they were going to go look for at the end of the series. Is he the guy that Cassian kills at the beginning of Rogue One? I don't know. It could be. But then, I'm curious to see how he's able to find Jyn Erso. Also, Saw Gerrera the entire time knows about Jyn Erso because he kind of raised her at the beginning of her life. And so there's no mention of that, though, in this entire series, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, we get this intense fight scene in the apartment. I thought Clea was going to die there. We head into the final episode here with this intense fight scene in the apartment, and K2SO is just he's awesome. He's just flicking Imperial soldiers off, just like they're rag dolls, and it's crazy. I again, one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, and what a ride this has been, right? As we enter this final episode, K2SO coming to the rescue here, they're able to rescue Clea and head back to Yavin, and we're kind of doing the wrap up here for Andor. That was pretty much it, and we get to see some characters that we haven't seen in a while. So Saw is back, and he's looking more like the Saw that we see in Rogue One with all the breathing apparatus devices. And Mon Mothma looks like original trilogy Mon Mothma, which is great. It's amazing, right? You get to see just how far these characters have progressed from the beginning of season 1 until now, and they're very much their Rebellion counterparts, their Rogue One counterparts. It's great. And so Cassian comes back, and they know there's a weapon here. There's some energy. There's Galen, the Energy Project, Galen Erso, and I love this. That this is it's not a given, right? They're kind of like, well, okay, but I mean, there's some debate here going on of how much do we trust this because it comes from Luthen. They don't trust Luthen. Even Bail doesn't trust Luthen. I think that's actually a really interesting wrinkle. They're not just taking any of this on face value either. And I think that it's, again, it's just a super interesting, it just makes the characters more rich. So, that's, I really like that. Cassian and Val also just spend some time remembering the people that they've lost. And there's a lot of people that they've lost along the way. We've lost along the way, throughout this adventure, these 24 episodes of Andor. And you feel most of all for Clea in these final couple minutes here, because she's just in shock. She's like, I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost Luthen. I've lost the person I cared about the most, and it's just like you just feel for her, and it's it's really sad. So we get these closing shots here. It's almost like a little bit of a wrap up where you kind of are checking in on all the characters, and you're checking in on where they are, who what they're doing. You see Saw at the very end. You see Mon Mothma, Bail, and you even get to see Bix. And I knew, I called it in the last arc. I knew that we were going to end the series on Bix. I thought we were going to actually end the series on Bix post Rogue One, post New Hope, post Cassian's death, and it could be maybe in that final shot she knows. I don't know. There's nothing specific. I have a feeling it's just her, what she's up to in that moment, right as Cassian's about to leave from Yavin. But I kind of figured, it makes sense, right? We have to kind of emotionally tie up those tie up that emotional arc between Cassian and Bix, and sure enough, we do. And so that's it. That's Andor season 2, and you kind of take a step back, right? Each little arc, each little story feels like a lot, and yet feels like it's just one little piece of a giant tapestry that was being built. And sure enough, after 24 episodes, I've seen all 24 episodes of Andor in the span of a couple months, I think. I started my rewatch of Andor season 1 something like a couple months ago, in February maybe. So in the span of 3 months or so, I've seen all of Andor. And I'm hoping to see Rogue One again in the next couple of weeks. And it's amazing. It's truly amazing. You see, you go from seeing Cassian as this person who's like, I'm just out for myself. I only care about Marva. And I only care about just making it out of here in one piece, to being a true leader, You see Mon Mothma being scared, but willing to do the right thing, to taking on that leadership position in the rebellion. You see Luthen, who is so dogmatic and so willing to do whatever it takes for the rebellion, and he dies with that conviction. And it's amazing. It's amazing what they were able to do. Again, I don't think Andor, to me, is the show that I am just going to look at every single time and go, oh yes, this is my all-time favorite, comfort watch, and I'm going to watch, if I ever want to watch anything Star Wars, it's going to be Andor. I don't think so. But I just appreciate and love so much the place in Star Wars that Andor resides in. It feels so real. It adds so much color and depth to the Star Wars universe of how the rebellion came to be. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. These rebellions are not built overnight. It took years. It took people's sacrifices and people sacrificing other people, frankly, to get there, and espionage and betrayals and spying and nobility and courage and bravery. And it's amazing to see what it took to get the rebellion to where it is. I will forever appreciate this series for showing us that. And I think that forever, right, seeing now Rogue One, seeing A New Hope, and realizing this is what it took to get the rebellion to this point is something invaluable that this series did. And I think also above all, right, because one of the criticisms, this is the last thing I'll say before we close out the segment, one of the criticisms about the prequels was that, the politics and all the boring Senate talk and whatnot. And I get it. The prequels, they really didn't execute it that well, in my opinion. But that's not to say that politics in Star Wars is inherently a bad thing. I think Andor, and I'm saying this, lowercase p politics. I have to keep saying this. It's not capital P American Democrat Republican politics. It's lowercase p politics. Is brilliant. Because that is what society is built. It's the empire. It's showing the political machinations of the empire and what it took to overthrow it. I think it's brilliant. It's history. It's politics. It's ideology. It's social science. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Anyways, that's just my little aside. I think it's great. I am so glad we have something like Andor in the Star Wars universe. Just as glad as I am that we have something like Skeleton Crew in the Star Wars universe. Skeleton Crew, to me, is probably still going to be my favorite Star Wars show because it just brought me that joyous feeling that I remember from watching Star Wars when I was younger. But that's, again, not to say that I loved Andor and what Andor brought to Star Wars and to me as a Star Wars fan. I'm just so grateful for that. So guys, what did you think about Andor? It is now over. Andor season 2 is now over. Where does it rank amongst all of your all the Star Wars projects, the movies, the shows, all that good stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, let's close out this podcast episode by talking about the trailer of trailers these days. It is, of course, the second main trailer, not counting the little sneak peek, but this is the second full new main trailer for Superman. Let's talk about that trailer. So, just to give you a little bit of context here about my thoughts so far on the marketing for Superman, because I know it's sort of a big deal what people think about the marketing of Superman. Some people want to be out there and want to be hating just because they want to get clicks and they want people to notice them and they want to whine about things and complain about things. I don't get that. I mean, if you genuinely hated the trailer and you just said it's not for me, I really don't, that's fine. That is what it is. There are a lot of people on the internet who are not like that. There's also a lot of people, and I celebrate this, who have just absolutely fallen in love with the marketing that they've seen and are so excited for Superman. And I really, again, I'm just so excited for you guys. If you can't tell, I am really neither of those things in the past, right? And we're not talking about the second trailer just yet. I'll talk about how the second trailer may or may not have changed my thoughts on this. But in the past, watching the first teaser trailer and then watching that sneak peek with the Fortress of Solitude, I've seen a lot in these trailers that have made me so hopeful. Pun intended, because of Superman, just so hopeful to see a movie that I think just completely gets the essence of Superman. The music, first of all, the music is doing so much of the heavy lifting with the John Williams score, the orchestral cover of that score, and just the really somber but also beautiful, hopeful notes of that score. It's doing so much for these trailers. And the other thing, too, is just those moments, those quiet moments between Clark Kent and Pa Kent, right, that we see in the trailers, and those moments between Lois and Clark as well. It shows the humanity behind the character, where he's saving the little kid, from the debris, and then he's also saving the little boy who's holding up the Superman flag. It shows that this is a character who who really embraces humanity. And I love that. I love that. On the other hand, and again, we're not talking about this, the new trailer just yet. I'll get to that in just a second. But just in terms of my thoughts on the previous marketing, in terms of things that I just was not a big fan of, some of the humor in these trailers, like especially in The Fortress of Solitude, it just felt a little too James Gunn for Superman, in my opinion. And that's been really my worry, because I love Peacemaker, I love the Suicide Squad, Guardians of the Galaxy. Superman is different, though, right? All those properties, Creature Commandos, have something in common. It's more irreverent. Superman can be funny. I don't know if I'd use the word irreverent, right? So this needs to be different. And again, not that the humor has been irreverent thus far, the Superman trailers, but just some of the things that the robots were saying, I was like, okay. Crypto, again, I love dogs. I've said this before. I love and adore dogs. I don't know how much I can buy Super Dog in live action. I don't know. It's a little bit of a stretch for me every time he shows up on screen. It really is. Like, there is a suspension of disbelief, and everyone has a different level of where they fall off. And for me, I guess it's just Super Dog in live action. I don't know. I really don't know. And then just, a couple other things here and there that I'm like, yeah, I mean, some of the Justice Gang, is that what they're called? The Justice Gang? Not super impressed by their costumes. These are all little minor things. So I'm in between. I'm very excited because I get downright somewhat emotional when I hear the John Williams score and see some of those scenes where he's flying and providing hope to people. I really do. But there are just enough things to give me a little bit of pause that I'm like, okay, let's see what's next. So we get the second trailer. And I will say, there are more things to give me hope in this trailer. A couple more things that I didn't see in previous trailers that I'm like, okay, I'm excited to see that. And yet there's still just enough trepidation that is preventing me from being so completely fully on board with the movie. And so let's get to those first before we get to the things that I really loved from this trailer. Number one, there are a couple things about the opening scene, the opening conversation between Lois, the interview with Lois and Superman, that I really enjoy. And we'll get to those in just a second. I get the essence of Superman wanting to do good and being unrestricted, but, living in a world that is more cynical and jaded. That's really what James Gunn's pitch was. What it kind of came off to me as a little bit in the trailer was sort of that angsty Superman again, almost like not Kid Superman. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Where he's like, it's not fair. I want to just do good for people, and why can't they understand me? And again, I'm over exaggerating. I understand that, but just to make a point of that's a little bit of the tone that I was getting from the beginning of a Superman that's frustrated and very naive. Now, in the context of the movie, because that is, James Gunn has said, he's going for a much younger, inexperienced Superman, and that's great. It's in the execution that some parts of the beginning came off to me as a little bit of Superman going, why, it's not fair. And you can make that work. And in the context of the movie, I just need to see how that plays out, because I don't need Superman to have everything figured out. I just don't know if I want Superman to be, just going around being like, it's not fair. Why don't they just let me do what I want, if that makes sense. Couple other things here. There are a lot of characters that are floating around in this movie, and there are just a lot of things that are happening in the movie. And so I continue to wonder, maybe not even be worried, but wonder about how there's now a giant robot mech thing that Lex Luthor has. And there's Lex Luthor, there's Ultraman, there's the Engineer, there's Guy Gardner, there's Hawkgirl, there's missing the other Metamorpho and Mr. Terrific, and there's a Kaiju, and it's a lot. And again, I get that a lot of these characters are paired together, and I'm sure that they're not all just going to be, in their own scenes. I'm sure that they're all going to be together, and the plot's going to make them, line up together. It feels like a lot, and I don't know. I'm just still waiting to see how that goes. And the only other thing that really I'm still a little bit iffy on, surprisingly, is David Corenswet's voice. I was very ambivalent on Henry Cavill's voice as Superman, and again, it's getting very nitpicky, but these are things that form the bigger picture when they're put together, and so I think that they're important in that sense. And I was never somebody who thought Henry Cavill was the perfect Superman. I think his voice, he was a little bit bland and monotone, and he took that approach to Superman. I am not completely sold on David Corenswet and some of the dialogue that he's been given, and also just the tenor of his voice, especially the line where he's like, hey, look up. And I was like, wow, that's not what I expected him, to sound like when he says look up. And so there are just a few things in here in the trailer that make me go, huh, okay. Again, it's adding to those other things that I talked about earlier with crypto and with some of the jokes that I'm like, there's just enough trepidation that makes me go, I'm going to be watching for these things. But everything else, the relationship between Lois and Clark. First of all, Rachel Brosnahan looks amazing as Lois. She just, the reporter vibe, the energy that she's bringing, interrogating Superman and really matching up to him, squaring up to him verbally is it's beautiful. It's awesome. She looks like the best version of Lois Lane. No offense to Amy Adams. She was good. But Rachel Brosnahan, she looks awesome as Lex Luthor, as Lois Lane. Speaking of Lex Luthor, though, Nicholas Hoult continues to look like a great casting. The way that these scenes are shot is beautiful. It really is so assured and definitive. And some of the scenes are like Superman flying into the air and the action scenes. It looks beautiful. It looks really great. I am slowly getting a little more, maybe not on board, but used to the Superman costume. I still don't love how it kind of looks a little baggy. I don't need everyone to wear wetsuits. That's totally fine. You don't have to wear skin tight spandex. It just looks a little too much like he's just wearing cloth, fabric, which it is fabric, I suppose, but you know what I mean. And yeah, I mean, I think everything else that I see from the trailer, the fact that he is looking for that humanity and he is trying to give it to people and he is frustrated because the world doesn't see it that way and he wants to just do good for people like he says in the trailer, that's awesome. That is the essence of Superman, and I love that. So again, I'm not here to nitpick the trailer to death, even though that's what I just did, basically. I'm just here to say that there are things in this trailer that give me some pause, and there are also things in the trailer that continue to make me believe that this film could potentially be one of the best superhero movies in a long time, and certainly one of the best Superman movies in a long time as well. So guys, those are my thoughts on the second trailer for Superman. What did you think about the trailer? Did you like it more than the first trailer? Are you excited more this time around with this trailer, or maybe still the same, or maybe a little bit less? Let me know in the comments down below. And everyone, that will do it for episode number 78 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much again. And I genuinely mean this every single week as I close out these episodes. It is such a treat to be able to talk about these topics and get excited about different things and different movies and shows that are coming out. I'm just genuinely so grateful. So thank you so much, guys. As always, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters Pod on the YouTube channel. We are barreling towards 100, episode number 100, which is crazy to think about. And also, again, we're trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so that would be huge. That would be amazing. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you want to listen to the audio-only platforms on Spotify, Overcast, and I always do that, Overcast and Google Podcasts, make sure to check it out, give us a rating. And that will do it from the Access Blockbusters Pod, episode number 78. I will see you guys in the next one.